Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I'm going to let you into a little secret. I was feeling a little bit down today. Sat there feeling sorry for myself, completely wiped out of energy and just not in the mood to record a podcast. But today's guest, Feargal O'Neill, possessed infectious enthusiasm, positivity and heaps of Irish charm, which changed all that within a few minutes. And Feargal O'Neill is the CEO of Gamma Location Intelligence Services, a company that has recently expanded its operations from Ireland into the UK and beyond. And the company uses location intelligence, integrates software data and services to help clients reduce risk all through location intelligence. And I must admit, this was a topic I didn't know too much about, and one of the reasons I invited Feargal onto the show today. So today, I did end up losing myself in conversation and learning more about location intelligence technology. So you guys and girls are in for a treat today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Dublin so we can speak with Feargal O'Neill. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Feargal. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Good morning, Neil. I'm Feargal O'Neill, and I'm the CEO of Gamma Location Intelligence. And we are a provider of cloud-native location intelligence solutions and services. So location intelligence, for any of your listeners who mightn't be familiar with the term, is the use of the physical location of data on the Earth's surface as a means of analysing and gaining insights into data. So if you've ever used Google Maps, or if you've looked at COVID cases mapped out by area, you are a user of location intelligence. So that's broadly the area that we're involved in.
It's an incredibly exciting space to be in at the moment. And I understand as well that Gamma Location Intelligence also has offices in Dublin, where you're talking to me from today, but also Manchester and Bilbao in Spain. And essentially, I think you integrate software, data and services to help your clients reduce risk all through location intelligence. Again, incredibly cool. But can you tell the listeners a little more about the kind of problems that you're solving with this technology?
Sure. I mean, the kind of problems are geographical problems, so our spatial problems, as they're called. So they often involve the question, where? So where is the best location for opening a new store, for example? Which areas are the best match for something, for example, in picking out neighborhoods for marketing? Which route is the quickest? What is at a particular location? So if you want to find out everything that is at a particular location, like, for example, in property risk assessment, for example. And then if you get a little bit more complicated in terms of the questions, you can compare two completely disparate data sets, such as finding out how one data set correlates with another data set, where the only common link may be the fact that they have common locations that isn't stored within the data, but is once you plot it out and geocode it. So typically geographical problems. But we're constantly assessing new challenges. Climate change, for one, for example, to see how location intelligence can help. So there's always problems to assess and to solve with LI, and that's what makes it so exciting.
I'm curious though, where did your passion for location intelligence tech come from? There's got to be a story there. What was it that put you on this path?
Well, I suppose it comes from 4 years in Trinity College in Dublin, where I was studying geography and economics, and then I spent 2 more in University College Dublin studying town planning. So these are very spatial sciences. So it cultured a fascination with mapping out and analysing problems geographically. And then when what was called at the time GIS, still is, Geographical Information Systems, came out, it brought all these sort of methodologies and methods and ways of thinking into the digital realm. And I suppose I've been fascinated with that ever since, and I've remained in GIS, or location intelligence as we now call it.
And you do have 25 years experience working in the location intelligence sector. So for anyone listening that is hearing about it for the first time, in particular business leaders and decision makers, are there any insights you can share about the kind of value that kind of technology can deliver for businesses?
Yes, for sure. I suppose much of the fundamentals of location intelligence haven't changed significantly since, I suppose, the most famous first guy to really be associated with sieve mapping or spatial analysis, as it's called, was Dr. John Snow in 1854 in London, where he plotted out. I don't know if all your listeners are aware of him, but just to sort of, I suppose, detail a little bit of what he did. He plotted out cholera victims manually on a map, and plotted out the addresses where they were recorded. And then he plotted out the location of water pumps. And from that, he was able to, see a cluster around a particular water pump in Broad Street, which identified it as being that sewage had basically polluted the well there and was causing the cholera being transmitted by water. Because at the time, it was certainly a strong view that cholera was airborne, an airborne disease. So he was, I suppose, one of the first to use mapping and use this sort of spatial correlation and use this visual analysis to come up with these location insights. And he even did stuff such as walk time isochrones, so identifying areas of equal walk time to exclude certain other water pumps. So a huge amount hasn't changed since that day. We're still looking at the same things. We're still geocoding. We're still analyzing data. We're still looking for those spatial correlations and the visual clusters, and we're using maps to present the results. I suppose what has changed, obviously, is a huge amount more data. The spatial models are far more complicated. There's masses of cloud-based computing power, and there's some of the data, such as the dynamic data from mobile phone trace data, aggregated transaction data. There's a huge amount more there, but the fundamentals really go back to 1850, and I suppose they're still the core benefits that are behind location intelligence.
And of course, he also went on to become King of the North, but that's a story for another podcast, right? But of course, you guys work with insurance companies and retailers and so many others. So do you have any use cases that will just help bring that kind of work to life and for anyone listening?
Sure. Our Perilfinder platform, which is used by underwriters in insurance, they would use that for assessing property level risk. So by entering any address in the UK, they would basically be brought to that exact property location and be presented with a whole range of risk values around environmental risks, such as flooding, subsidence, or subsidence as we call it in the UK, crime data, all this information that's associated with that particular location. So I suppose that would be Perilfinder. They also are able to use this information to calculate what's called accumulated risk. And accumulated risk is critical in insurance, in that an insurance company needs to know who else it has covered within a particular cluster, or next door neighbors, or along a street, because if an event happens at that location, they can be overexposed. So they always want to have visibility on what they call accumulated risk. Also, I suppose in the insurance space, we also would provide web services. So at quotation phase, we'd be feeding in property level data to the insurance company to populate forms of quotation stage. For example, filling in the number of stories in a building, the building age, the usage, is it commercial or residential. So all of these things make the quotation processes easier. It reduces cart abandonment, make it a much better service for the customer. And I suppose the third area in insurance that we would work in would be claims management. So when it comes to making decisions over which claims to process quickly and which maybe to investigate a little bit further, we make it easier by allowing the claims manager to see the claims visually on a map, and then to overlay the extent of a particular event. If we say flood again as an example, so they could see basically where a flood had occurred and see, well, all these claims are fine because they occurred within where the flood happened, but there's a few here that are located up in the mountains. So maybe we'll investigate these a little bit further before making a quick payment. Retail you mentioned there as well, which is an exciting area for us. We have our Storecast platform, which helps retailers optimize their physical store networks using our models and data, and also helps them to monitor their existing stores to see, especially nowadays with the way retail is changing, what's happening around their stores. Is their market share changing from aggregated transaction data that we use? Is there a lot of vacancy happening? Where should they locate in terms of new opportunities? If there is new opportunities, how will one store's opening impact their existing stores in a process called the delightful cannibalization process? I suppose that's probably the two key areas that we're working in insurance and in retail.
And before you came on the podcast today, I did a little bit of research on you guys to find out what you were working on, etc. And I quickly learned that you've got quite you've been expanding into the UK market and also investing heavily into research and development. Can you expand on that work that you're doing too?
Yeah, well, we have definitely expanded into the UK market. We opened an office in downtown Manchester in 2020, which we haven't seen much of for obvious reasons. We have created a lot of new UK data and created a lot of new partnerships with some of the key UK data providers. In terms of our research and development, yeah, we've been doing a lot. We've been developing a property level data set for Great Britain and Ireland, which we call AddressLink, which is combining all of the various risk data sets, property level data that we have and that we work with our partners into a single view of truth. It's a 2-year program which will roll out. We're in the end of year 1 of it now. We're using advanced modeling, AI, to predict values for missing data, machine learning. We're also developing new modules for Perilfinder, our insurance platform. We're doing similar work on Storecast, developing new aspects to that. And I suppose we have a particular unit, Neil, in our company, which we call the Location Labs, which is focused on just looking at any new applications of location intelligence. And one that actually came up recently was, which is a very interesting area, is in the whole area of deep retrofit. So deep retrofit is sort of retrofitting homes to be more energy efficient. So we've been working with the startup company called BROWOW to develop a tool for energy companies to help homeowners guide them through the process of deep retrofit to see the costs and benefits of investing in various works within their home. So, very busy on the R&D front last year particularly.
And not only that, I also read that you leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning. So where does that fit into everything?
Well, we've been using computer vision, for example, in capturing data from imagery such as, building typologies, roof types. We've also been using it in Earth observation data capture. We've long used AI in our predictive models, including neural network modeling. We've been using machine learning to fill in gaps in our AddressLink dataset, which has proved really useful to I suppose populate gaps we have with the most likely values. So yeah, it's an area that's really exciting, and it's changed certainly how we capture and model our data.
Something I always ask every guest that comes on this podcast is, are there any particular myths or misconceptions that frustrate you in your industry? So for yourself, are there any myths around location intelligence that frustrate you on a daily basis that you want to finally lay to rest?
Yeah, you might open a wasp nest there now. But I suppose one that I could think of certainly is the myth that when we get more precise with data, when we improve our data sets, and when we get more detail and better information, that it's sometimes a bad deal for the consumer. Like, for example, in insurance, there's certainly a view that because insurance companies are now analyzing data at the property level, and they can tell more about individual properties than they would have been able to 20 years ago, that it's a worse deal for the consumer, where the opposite is actually the case. And I suppose if I give you the example of flood insurance as one particular one, if we go back 20, 30 years ago, when insurance companies were just, I suppose, assessing areas on an area basis, if an area had a history of flooding, the insurance company would provide implement a block exclusion for the whole area. So no one in the area would be covered, or they'd all be treated a certain way, because they knew that there was a risk of flooding in the area, but they didn't have the precision to know which homes were being involved. Nowadays, with our systems, for example, they can tell that, well, there's 200 homes in this town, but only 15 of them located close to the river are actually at risk. The rest are actually fine. So for the other, 185 homes in that town, they're actually getting a much better deal before they used to be excluded. So it's rare that more information and more detail is a bad thing for the consumer.
Absolutely. And if we look a little bit into the future horizon, is there anything that excites you about where location intelligence tech is heading, and equally the role that Gamma will play in that future?
Yeah, I mean, what I love about location intelligence is that it finds a critical role in so many of the planet's key challenges. And I've mentioned two already: climate change and COVID. It is absolutely central in taking on those challenges. I'm also excited that there's so much more data available, including Earth observation data. Much of it is open now, which is great, that change in policy. We can analyze it much quicker, much better, much more powerfully than ever before with our cloud computing capabilities that are really open to anyone, small companies and large alike. And the whole idea that we have a chance to be part of those solutions in the future, I think, is probably what excites me most.
Love that. And for anyone listening that would like to dig a little bit deeper into anything that we talked about today, what's the best way of finding you online, and equally contacting your team if they are left with any questions?
Sure. Well, I mean, all the information is found on our website. Our UK website is Gamma Li, so it's GAMMALI.co.uk.
Excellent. Well, I'll add that link to the blog post that will accompany this episode so people can find you nice and easily. But I think location intelligence is a subject we don't talk about enough, and I certainly don't on this podcast. So it's great to get you on here and just sharing some insights around how the value that location intelligence can deliver for businesses, and also how Gamma Location Intelligence's technology solutions are innovating for your clients too. Incredibly cool, all the work that you're doing. I'd love to stay in touch with you and see where this leads, but more than anything, just thanks for spending a few minutes with me today.
Thanks a million, Neil.
Feargal, if you are listening back to this podcast today, just a big thank you for just being you and bringing a little sunshine to a very cloudy day here in the Midlands. And the fact that Feargal has 25 years experience in working with location intelligence, and hearing more about his great ambitions for the company is somewhat inspiring. And of course, I loved hearing about his insights about the value that location intelligence can deliver for businesses, and how Gamma Location Intelligence tech solutions are innovating for their clients. So many big talking points. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, location intelligence is not my strongest point, and I expect that there will be lots of people listening all over the world who have a lot to say on that topic. There's an invitation for you to come on here and talk about it and share your expertise. And equally, you can just ask me a question or send me a few comments, whatever it is. Email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 1,500 interviews and a couple of other podcasts I host with Netgear and Citrix. But I'm afraid we're out of time for today. I'm going to return tomorrow with another guest, so hopefully you'll join me again. But a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.